And I think a lot of
Hmm.
people, especially if you're in the B2B SaaS world, a lot of people have one idea of what a white paper is and what it can do, and it's all about lead generation. And
Hmm.
yes, 100%, it can get you better qualified leads, but it can also get you media coverage. You can build up your authority. It can be a sales enablement tool. You can educate your audience. There's really, if you think about the kind of marketing funnel, there's white papers can hit every step of that journey. And so I think white papers are such an underrated tool because people think about them so narrowly and they can do so many things. So it's just a great investment. Like they're longer. There's a bit more of an investment in content marketing generally,
Hmm.
but you can get like 3 months worth of content out of it across all your socials, webinars, all that kind of thing. And you can be really laser focused with your objective in terms of how that marketing is going to support your sales and
So
wider business objectives.
if I understand it, then white paper is a huge investment up front that pays back later manifold, basically.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
It's not really like a one-time thing if you're smart about it.
Yeah.
And this is where some white papers can just be like left to gather dust, right?
Hmm.
Someone launches it once, they put it on the website and they just forget about it. The smart way is to think about how you can amplify that one white paper across all your different channels and how it can kind of work harder for you. So yeah, it might be they typically are a bit more of an investment upfront than like a series of blogs or a webinar, like a 1 hour webinar, but you can get a lot more from it.
Okay.
And you can, yeah.
No, that makes total sense, and it reminds me of what video creation is. When you create a video, you really want to
Mm,
recycle it in so many ways, and not to say only other video formats, not only shorts, for example, or audio bites, but you
mm,
can transcribe that, you can turn that into a blog post, social, like it's so forth, so forth, so
mm,
forth. So I mean, white paper reminds me
mm.
of a similar investment up front to get cracking. You mentioned it can fill in the void, fill in the gap at every stage of the funnel. Are there any particular white
Mm-hmm.
paper, I don't know, types, I guess, that fit one stage
Mm.
of the funnel more than the other?
Yeah. So generally, there are three types of white paper,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a guy called that white paper guy, who's like the
Okay.
guru in the white paper world.
Wow.
He's really like
That's a
nailed his branding.
that's a good branding, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Um, and he has this analogy that I like, that there's three types of white papers, and he likens them to,
Okay.
which is kind of the background of white paper, and that's generally like a detailed exploration on a product or a service.
Mm-hmm.
So that tends to be more commercial and tends to be catching people at the bottom of that funnel of your kind of marketing and sales funnel. And so that's for people who are ready to buy, and they know they have a problem, and they're just comparing providers
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And then the strawberry flavor ice cream is like the list white paper. So that's when you might see like 7 ways to prepare for the data avalanche your law firm's gonna receive in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to be a bit more snappy, a bit more topical, but it's still kind of about, that's like an education piece with a bit of expert insight. So that tends to be more the middle. So people
Okay.
who are problem aware, but it's still, you're kind of funneling them down through your sales cycle and you're building trust and
Mm-hmm.
knowledge with them. And then the kind of chocolate flavor white paper, which is what I normally, the type of ice cream I normally create, I guess,
Okay. Okay.
which tends to be what people think about when you say white paper, is much more of a kind of rich um, exploration of a topic or a theme, or maybe some market data or some proprietary data. You can do some interesting things there. And that's really about awareness. So that's people, getting people into your kind of orbit and getting them to know you and they might not know that they have a problem, but they think that that white paper is a really interesting thing to download, and then it'll start kind of the clogs whirring, and they're like, oh yeah, that is something I probably need to think about next year. And yeah,
All right.
that's how that funnel kind of works.
And that's actually very interesting. Well, I love that. So, we have vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate flavor. Okay. I usually go for
Yeah.
vanilla, and I don't mean white papers actually, but that's how I go. So vanilla is bottom of the funnel, the exploration of the
Yeah.
topic. Okay. Then we have strawberry,
Mm.
which are listicles most of the time, and there are middle of the
Yeah.
funnel. And then we have chocolate flavor,
Mm-hmm.
which is top of the funnel for people who need to become aware of the problem that we're solving. Is that correct?
Mm.
Okay,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
cool. And then maybe you could elaborate on that a bit. Just a minute ago, you mentioned that some people should choose white papers, for example, over writing a blog post or doing anything else.
Mm-hmm.
What are other
Mm-hmm.
advantages of white papers over the other formats, that writing formats?
Yeah, so this is interesting because I have quite a lot of conversations with marketing managers about this, because they're like, oh, should I write an ebook or a white paper or host a webinar?
Oh yeah.
And there's lots of different things you can do, right? So
Mhm.
it's kind of figuring out what's worth the investment and the time. And so a lot of the time, the most common thing that I hear is we're thinking about doing a series of blog posts. And I guess the similarity between a series of kind of top of the funnel blog posts and a white paper is you still get those, both of them, you're going to interview experts. So it's still that kind of thought leadership piece. But with a series of blog posts, you have less kind of less of a cohesive argument or like narrative that runs through all of them. It's just a little bit more split up, basically. And also a lot of the time people, for example, internally, when you're creating that content, maybe because they're a bit more scattergun, the time doesn't go into crunching the numbers, doing that research. Whereas if you have a thing that feels more like a big investment, more of a thing that the teams can all get around, there just tends to be a bit more thought sometimes and care put into, okay, what are we actually doing with this? What are the objectives? And there's more of a kind of narrative that flows throughout the whole white paper, that then ties back to that objective of whatever that they're doing the white paper for, if that makes sense.
It really does. And so with white paper, we get this holistic narrative. It's like a concise piece of information that does one job, and it does it very well. And that is the reward for all the hard work. But what are the challenges that are non-existent with the other formats? Because there needs to be some kind of trade-off upfront, I think, some kind of a roadblock in a way that we need to overcome when we start working with white papers in particular. Can you help us? Can you speak to that?
Yes. So I would say one of the main challenges is internal stakeholder buy-in. So generally, white papers are take longer to create and require more of a longer process. So I'm a copywriter and a content strategist, so I work across a few different types of content marketing. White papers, I have a much more robust approach and process than all my other types of work, because you need to get so many different teams involved. So depending on the objective, but normally I like to get the CEO or the leadership team, marketing team who have normally briefed me, the sales team, because they have the conversation with the customers, and then normally there'll be I need some kind of technical person in the room as well, and everyone needs to agree on the approach and the angle. And sometimes a CEO will say, oh, that's, this is where I really want the business to go, we're really prioritizing this at the moment, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. And the technical team will be like, oh, we haven't actually, like, that feature isn't going to be released for another year, so we probably should talk about that specific thing. So I'd say one of the challenges is definitely getting agreements across all teams up front on the topic, the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and also something that is really key that I find is thinking a bit more granular about your call to action. And I think because the writing of the white paper and the topic ideation can be really detailed and take a long time. Sometimes by the time you get to the call to action, they're just like, sign up for a demo. But it really makes sense to take a step back and think, okay, where is this white paper in our buyer's journey? If it's top of the funnel and we're sending it to CTOs, so chief technology officers,
mm-hmm.
are they gonna just sign up for a demo? And if that demo requires them to sit on a sales call for an hour, probably not. So but they might I don't know, take a 2-minute survey that then leads them into another step another step kind of down that buying cycle, and it's a bit more incremental. So sometimes I kind of have those tough conversations with clients where I'm like, no, that CTA, that call to action, we need to think a bit more deeply about this and about where it sits in your cycle. So yeah, those are probably, and the other big challenge I find is some white papers are just too commercial. And yes, that vanilla flavor white paper is the bottom of the funnel, but it's still not a sales brochure. White papers are for education, insight, and kind of expertise. And so I'd say, like, even if you have, I don't know, a white paper that's got, you've done all the things right in terms of your distribution strategy, if someone comes to it and the content is just so salesy, then it's probably not going to do. It's just not going to do its job.
No.
So that's another challenge. That's another challenge as well that I see quite a bit.
I can relate. It's just crazy how many similarities we have between white paper and building a website. Really, it's just stakeholder alignment is probably what makes or breaks the whole thing. And we in this conversation, I really wanted to cover the entire life cycle of a white paper from the beginning to the end. And I feel like we kind of already naturally stepped into a research part where the stakeholder alignment comes. Out of curiosity, have you ever had to deal with so-called design by committee?
Ooh, definitely dealt with death by
okay,
wow. Drafts.
I love
where
that.
There's just
death by committee. This is my favorite new phrase. Oh wow, this is great. So I remember having one query about the website project, and literally the marketer led with, how do you avoid design by committee, because I just can't stand it. How do you avoid that, Caroline, with white papers?
So I am quite upfront with all my clients, and I have quite I don't want to say strict, but I have a process. And everyone has to stick to my process.
Absolutely.
And that includes everyone who has editorial review has to be involved at every kind of deliverable stage. And I try and keep that. I try and limit the kind of the amount of people editorial review to 5 people within the business, and I will subtly try to ascertain or suss out if there is one person with executive approval.
Oh, I see. So you're being very subtle about this. Okay.
Yeah, but most markets, like most of my kind of my contacts are marketing managers, and so they tend to understand that challenge themselves. But as an external provider, sometimes it's easier for me to have those conversations than them potentially. So so yeah, that's pretty much. I'm really quite upfront, and I have a process, and I talk everyone through it, and I'm pretty firm about sticking to the process, which most people appreciate. But it does stop you getting into. I also have a set number of revisions, which can help streamline or not, just to make sure it doesn't blow out to different departments having more control over another, and kind of going through that.
Yeah, keep it in
Keep going
balance.
through the committee.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
No, I really like the part of the other part of the white paper that you mentioned. It needs to bring value the education first, and I truly believe as a content creator, and I this is a wide stroke. I mean, social posts, YouTube videos, anything. I call it just content creation, right? I really believe it's all for people, from people. We should teach people as much as possible. Knowledge is what makes humans grow as a civilization, and I really believe if white papers do that for people, like if they can read the thing and the next day at work they can apply that knowledge to perform better, that's a win for me. And I really appreciate how white papers can do that for us. This is amazing. Uh, we started. Oh, sorry, you wanted to add something to this?
I was just going to ask, how do you balance that with, what's that phrase? I can't remember the phrase. How do you balance that, giving that value or teaching someone how to do it rather than showing them why it's important, and then as a business,
Okay, I think
hoping that they come to you.
No, that makes sense.
To
like,
do the doing.
Obviously,
you know what
we're
I mean?
not. Altruism is dead, and sure, like everyone has a little agenda, right? And if we are on LinkedIn and we're posting something, obviously we want people to notice us and hopefully talk to us, etc. However, I don't think both pieces of I mean, these are two sides to the same coin. At the same time, you want to teach people because it's just great. I genuinely believe teaching people is fantastic. And if they are at their stage of their life in which my agenda meets with their agenda, and we know each other because we taught each other and we got value from each other's relationship, that's even better. But I'm not pushing for it. If it happens, it's meant to be. If it doesn't happen, it's not meant to be. And perhaps this little the concept of funnel, it also helps. If someone is in the I guess desire stage, you as a person who's teaching them something feels a bit more comfortable to just give them a nudge. Hey, how about? But if someone is somewhere there out in the blue, just tell them this is helpful for you, I think. Tell me if you have any questions. I'm happy to explain more, and leave them be. Like, leave them to their own devices. Let them double with it a bit, and when they're ready, they'll come up and maybe say, "Hi, Thomas. We worked. Oh, sorry, I read something from you like 1 year ago. Now I find myself in a position where it's actually valuable, and I'm ready to go." So that's I look at it as like human relationship, just normal, genuine conversation, and when things are right, good stuff comes out of it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's sometimes a little bit different with just in terms of content. I agree on, I think on LinkedIn, I guess maybe there's different kind of levels of value and different types that work best across different types of content, if that makes sense.
It does. No,
So
I see what you mean. Absolutely. I think there's there's time for everything, and it's just on us as content creators to read that room and step in when it's needed, and not to overstep boundaries, but also not to stay maybe too quiet when there was an opportunity, actually. So it's something that comes with experience, I believe. It just yeah. We sort of started already about talking about the research and the stakeholder alignment. Sure, that all works. But I believe you also do some kind of research on your end. You don't just solely rely on the input from the stakeholders. You kind of look beyond that too. Can you take us through the data collection and decision making behind that?
So that all depends on the client, to be honest.
Okay.
So some clients will come to me and they will have an idea of what white paper, either kind of broad subject, or they'll be quite specific that they want a white paper on structured data and its use for Gen AI, for example. Some others don't have a topic in mind. They know that they want to invest in a white paper. They think it's like a good aligns with their marketing and their business goals. And so it kind of, there's that piece there. In that scenario, there's a lot more research for me up front, just in terms of topic ideation before I even get to kind of data. So in that instance, I will do a kind of competitor. Normally I write in finance and law niches within tech, and I am, I've worked in those for like kind of 9 years, so I know the lay of the land. So I will have a think about kind of what's what people are talking about, what conversations are happening. I'll do a competitor analysis, and also take a look into benchmark data, or data that's kind of going around the industry that's interesting, and that might spark some ideas for me. And I'll also, it also really helps to talk to normally the sales team in that stage, because they, like a lot of sales team are sitting on a lot of data that you can turn into something that's really interesting, and they haven't had to think about it in that way. So so that can kind of be one way to approach the data. And then I'll say, or like some other white papers are, okay, let's do our own piece of research. That works a lot for if the objective of the white paper is to get media coverage and for brand awareness. Data, like proprietary data, research, surveys, they are really popular ways to do that, because they can kind of make news and make headlines a bit more, and it doesn't feel so commercial, right? So I worked on a white paper as part of a team a couple of years ago that looked at aged care spending in Australia, and that was a big research piece, and he won an award and got millions of views and stuff. That was a really successful white paper, but that's different and more of an investment, because if you are running your own research or survey of your customers. But in the other scenario, when someone comes to me and they say, okay, so we think that we want to write this white paper around this topic, I generally will sit down, and I kind of, the way that I write my approach to writing the white paper is through something that I call a story selling framework. And that means that I'll come up with a kind of master narrative for the white paper. And that is kind of I guess the common thread, or the argument, or the kind of the position that we're taking. And when I come up with that, I will sit down and I will think, okay, so how could data illustrate this? How can data support this narrative? And I kind of want, in this instance, I'm not really looking for the data to lead. It's more of a social, like credibility markers, digging further into topics. And I will come up with a list of questions, and I'll go back to the client and say, okay, do you have data points around these things that you can pull from your sales team can pull, your tech team can pull? Do you know how many clients are doing this, or how many of your customers are using your product in this way? Or I'm trying to think of the one I was asking for yesterday. Yes, how many of your clients have used this specific feature to do this cool thing that we didn't really know clients were using your tech for, but your sales team actually heard on a call 3 weeks ago that someone's doing this. Someone's using it in that way. So it's kind of just like uncovering and kind of digging into different data points. And a lot of the time I'll go back, I'll ask them for like 20 data points, and I know that some of them we're probably not going to get, but it's just about kind of pushing the buttons and asking the right questions, and normally something comes from that.
It's crazy how wide of a scope that research is. And if you think about organization on the just level wise, you start somewhere there in the outer space with the competitors research, and you out there in the trenches, and then you trickle all of that down into the very fine bone of the company's being, and ask questions about products, little pieces, little sentences, thoughts, everything. You just poke holes where you can, so that you can eventually connect the dots and
Exactly.
create something that's meaningful for the business. That's actually very beautiful. If I understand it correctly, you first draw from experience, then you let me try again. You first draw from experience, market research, stakeholder input,
Mm-hmm.
what's like surveys,
Mm-hmm.
what's etc., and then you
Mm-hmm.
put that through the storytelling framework, which yields
Mm-hmm.
a couple of threads or topics, themes that you could use for the white paper. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So by that point, I will put together a topic proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically a kind of skeleton of two, it'll be one or two topics. And I'll say, okay, this is what I think the master narrative could be. These are, so I'll have my master narrative, and then I have 3 story pillars that kind of support, like a little house, support the overarching master narrative.
Okay.
And they tend to be 3 kind of key points, discussion points or arguments, depending on what the type of white paper. And then I'll have what I call the end papers, which is the call to action kind of at the bottom of our structure. And so I put them into kind of just a top line version of that, send them to the client and say, and what do you think of these 2? Can you pick one of them? Do you have any kind of amendments? And then the next step is I will build them out into, I'll build the one that they've picked into more of a outline of the document, of the eventual white paper. And at that point is when I start to plot the kind of what data points could we ask for and go kind of go fishing and find.
All right.
And then
I
once
love
that is approved, you'll see how I'm getting approval.
Aha. There's
I was just
more
going to say,
levels to it. Okay.
so this is like, yeah. Once that outline is approved, then I write the white paper. So there's like 4 different steps before I actually start writing the whole thing.
Okay.
To make sure that we have got all of the right stuff.
No, but I think that preparation is very important. You lay down foundations which will serve for the rest of the project. If you screw that up, the white paper just can't be good. So you have to do research right, and I appreciate how resource heavy it is. And I know people will always want to skip research and just jump the gun and do the thing, but you really need to at least do just enough research. And what just enough means is entirely subjective, but you need to reduce that risk or minimize that uncertainty to the point in which you are confident that whatever you're going to invest in, white paper in this particular case, will pay off or has the highest chance to pay off. This all sounds like lots of work. It really does. And can you tell me how long do you typically spend on that research part?
It depends how long the white paper is the kind of annoying and short answer. But so let's say a typical white paper is like 3,000 words typically. So that's like 6 to 8 pages. And that research probably takes a couple of days in terms of hours. If it's a top of the funnel topical thematic white paper. So actually, I just said a couple of days a day, probably about 7 hours, I'd say, all up. Whereas that white paper I mentioned earlier, that was more of a kind of media coverage objective, that was months, because we went out and did a survey, came back, we had to analyze it. We then had to, it was very, we used a lot of government data as well. So we had to fact check. There was just a lot we had to fact check. So that was like a very long project, but it was also like 45 pages. So it was also a very long white paper.
Is that still a white paper, or does it classify as a book by now?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Holy crap. Okay. So doesn't that sound a little bit like a chicken and egg situation, that you don't know how long the white paper is going to be, before you do the research, but then you have to know how long research is
Mm,
going to take before you like do you know what I mean? Like this is you can't know what you don't
mm,
know,
mm,
right? So you have to sort of go by that experience. You said like a typical white paper is 3,000 words, so average it's going to take this long, but keep in mind, you know, this and that, it might make the thing
mm,
longer. So I think setting those expectations up front is very important, but you seem to have it
mm.
very well organized. I mean, the process, as you said, is really strict and really solid. So I don't think there's
Well,
much room for an error.
well, because because I'm such a like white paper geek, because I find white paper so interesting. If I didn't have a process, I would spend so much time going down rabbit holes.
I bet.
So it's for me and the client. It keeps me in check as well.
That's good. No, that's absolutely. I think clients like those deadlines estimates. I find that people are terrible at estimating just by nature. Like how many times you said you will be there in 5 minutes and you took 7 minutes to get there. It's just the way it is. Like we really don't get it. And when we talk about abstracts like research and writing and the creative side overall, that's even worse.
Mm,
But
mm,
having some kind of tangible numbers to live by like okay, by afternoon this Friday I will try to have at least this, so you know what to expect, is very
mm,
helpful to
mm.
the client, and it puts them at ease, but also it makes us as a creatives feel like we did the job we're supposed to do. I think over promising is also as
Mm,
bad as under promising, and again
mm.
it's all human, it's fine, we just need to, you know, kind of give each other some, cut each other some slack when things go astray, and just let us go back into the track in our
Yeah.
own pace. Um, 3,000 words, about 2 days of research. What can go wrong?
In the research or
Uh-huh.
in general?
Yeah, no research. What are the biggest mistakes you see people make?
um, oh, probably picking the wrong research because, and this is kind of a wider point, I guess, as
Okay.
well. Research might look really, you might come up with a number that looks amazing and it's really shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be great for like a clickbait title. But if it doesn't, if it doesn't support the master narrative, and
Mm-hmm.
that master narrative is linked to the positioning, which is linked to the objective of the
Mm-hmm.
whole white paper, then it's not gonna do what you need it to do. If you're trying to position your brand as, I don't know, let's say you're launching into the US market. This is a really rudimentary example, but let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're launching into the US market and you come up with data that's really UK focused, looks amazing, but it's really UK focused. And someone comes to me and says, "Oh, this is so cool! Like, look at our, I don't know, adoptability percentage in the UK," or something even more niche than that, more specific than it, but it's completely mismatched with the audience you want to talk to and the point of the white paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's You're probably not going to get the results you want from it. You might get some more leads in the UK, but you probably aren't going to get them in the US. So I think um, making sure that that research is always aligned to the positioning of the white paper is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Fact checking sounds really basic, but especially in the kind of the world of AI,
Oh yeah.
it's really important to fact check robustly.
True. Yeah.
um, yeah. And I think the other thing, actually, a couple more things with the research is um, not having or not thinking about how you can represent it visually. If we're including stats and data, I think that can be a really important element
Mm-hmm.
that some white papers you just read and they're just so text heavy, and the images will be like of a man in a suit or
Oh.
you know, a lab, whereas you really want to try and visually, you get it, you guys work on websites, you want to visually represent the data in an interesting way
Yeah.
that adds value and isn't just there for the sake of it. I think those are probably the main research. I like going down rabbit holes as a whole. That's kind of across the whole white paper. That's not really research specific, but it can be a challenge there. And I think sometimes actually in research, there's a lot to be said for proprietary data. And instead of immediately going out and me finding data online and in academic like reports and stuff, lots of companies, especially in the kind of B2B world, are sitting on a lot of data. And it might take a few, it might take a few meetings, might take a few emails, but we can uncover some really interesting data points that no one else has, that kind of can make that unique point of view that in the white paper a lot stronger, because no one else is using the same data. So yeah,
that makes sense.
That's probably one of the main things.
First of all, you need to know who you are talking to, but hopefully your positioning and brand and people around you can help you with that. Then fact checking, get the easy stuff right. Although one point I would say to this, as I said, we've been writing a white paper, and there's this great number circling around LinkedIn that I think even beyond LinkedIn, that 40% of businesses, business deals, they fall through due to indecision. And we tried really, really hard to get where that number come from. Everyone believes it. Hell, people are quoting those numbers in their books, but no one knows where it come from. And I would be, like, it's so easy to just read something and take it on face value, but the minute you look behind it, there's nothing there. So this fact checking, it sounds easy, and probably most of the time is when you use legitimate sources of information, they will leave you the actual snippet, paragraph, fragment of the text where they got the data from. And that's great. But sometimes we are too eager to believe something to be true. And that's where fact checking is really important.
Yeah. And it's, I was just going to say and sometimes it's me doing sometimes it's me finding the data, and I have I make sure that I fact check it because I've been there. But also sometimes it'll be one of the sales reps had a conversation with someone else and they said 30% of blah, blah, blah. And so he's told marketing, and then marketing says to me, this is a really great stat, we should include it. And I'll go back around, I won't be able to find it. And I'll go back around the houses to the original source and they'll be like, oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
So when there's a lot of different teams involved, it can get a bit complicated. Yeah.
It really does. It's kind of like a Chinese whisper, right? But when you start reversing that, and then the original information is actually completely different. And then we have design part, which I'm very familiar with as well. I think something I really like as a designer is that content first approach over design first approach. And it seems like you have the same view with white papers. You first write all the text, all the copy, everything you want to say, and then worry how to present it in the most efficient way to the user, rather than creating templates and designs and try to fit the copy into it. Does that track?
Exactly. And it's a lot easier because I do write websites as well, and it's a lot, people in white papers just that seems to be the set process that everyone follows. In websites, sometimes I get a bit of kickback from some designers who would like it to be a different way. But in website and white papers, that's kind of,
it's actually very funny you mentioned designers that push back on that. We just learned about one of our clients getting a copywriter on board, I think it was a couple of days ago,
Mm.
and that copywriter wanted access to Figma files where we have page templates, page designs, so they can know how to write copy.
Mm.
I'm like, dude, that's that's not how, like the other way
Mm.
around, please. But it's easier. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally like this is the box, fill it in, and everyone's happy. But this is not the quality.
Mm.
That's not how it
Mm.
goes. Unfortunately, I
No,
wish it was that easy,
no.
but you gotta do your job right. Um, but but but
Yeah,
actually,
100%.
speaking of writing and doing the job right, uh, after you've presented all the topics and themes and starting collecting data, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the moment where you actually write the title and everything that follows. Uh, can you speak to the actual act of writing, creating? What happens there? Are there any secret sauces that you have? Any
Mm.
other tools that you, or frameworks? How do you use AI with this? Like, just go for it. Hello, can you hear me? Hey, yeah. Did we lose you? Oh, Caroline, you're good. Oh, she's going to. Okay, she's coming back. 1 second, chat. Things happen. Okay, this is real life. We're going to be just fine. We got a couple of chat messages. Let me see. Let me see. Hey,
I'm not sure what happened there. Sorry.
me neither. I no idea actually. It's totally fine. I was just looking through chat in the meantime. We actually have a question. Oh, actually, not surprises, David. But it's fine. So we're gonna get back to him later. So
Okay.
did you hear my question? Or would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, the act of actually sitting down and writing the thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, go for it.
um, so my first thing is my titles. I always write them after. This is for most of my work. So the title of the, I'll normally write the whole thing. I'll have an idea vaguely of what the title is, but I'll come back to it at the end.
Uh-huh.
Um, because I don't know, just seems to work best that way for me. Different bit difference with websites and hero statements, but for
Mm-hmm.
kind of blogs and white papers, that's how I approach that. And in terms of frameworks and stuff, I really just use that kind of storytelling framework that I spoke to earlier. I tend not to follow kind of problem agitate solution or kind of some of those more well-known story copywriting for kind of I guess frameworks or
Mm-hmm.
the Ada one for white papers because it um, it is more of a kind of narrative led. The ones that I write tend to be in the kind of those rich chocolate top of the funnel white papers tend to be more narrative, and they are kind of more like a book, to be honest.
Mm.
Um, and so honestly, I by the time I get to the writing, I've got quite a detailed outline, and I've spoken to experts. So the kind of I'll interview 3 to 5 different kind of experts from with inside my client's organization, and normally I try to get some from outside as well for
Mm-hmm.
I guess additional credibility
Mm-hmm.
and insights. And yeah, I'll just start kind of filling in the blanks of my outline and extending out arguments and thoughts and pop data here, quote here, and then yeah, I just sit down and I write for hours,
Yeah.
basically.
That,
Essentially, yeah.
okay, that's the heavy part, I guess. I mean, research is very much talking, finding connections between the dots, but writing is you and that canvas. And I guess the outline that you mentioned helps you to overcome the writer's block. Perhaps it's a good starting point, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's good. As you've probably gathered, I'm quite a process type
That's
of
great.
person.
I love that.
And
My brain works exactly the same way, so 100% agree here. Yeah.
so I like to have a detailed outline,
Mm-hmm.
but I find this part kind of the easiest part, to be honest. I find the research and the connecting the dots, I can sit there and just be looking kind of at my emails for like a few hours while I'm thinking through, what does this data mean, what logic flows, like does that argument, can I poke a hole in that argument, kind of thing. By the time I get to the writing, I'm excited just to get it all
All
down and
out.
mapped out, and then obviously I go back and I edit it a lot.
Okay.
but um but yeah, I'm kind of excited to just like let it come out of me. I don't know, that sounds a bit
No,
weird.
look, that's fine. It's very, very interesting. I feel the same way. Let's say I do have to design. I don't know what did I design lately. A pricing card, for example, and I do have an idea who is the pricing card for, what kind of people was gonna use that component on the website. And oftentimes I would just do the research, just look over dribblex.com for any tips, or maybe on LinkedIn if anyone has posted anything. I'm just gonna read and think back what I did in the past. And that part, when I let the brain digest all of it, is probably the best part in the whole process, because actually using Figma and moving the mouse pointer around, this is simple stuff. It's the power of brain that connects all the ideas together into something new and unusual. This needs time. It needs simmering. And to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, I often sleep on it, and there's a good reason why it's called that way. And so I 100% agree that by the time I start choosing colors and rounded corners, etc., I'm already set. I know what I'm doing. It's just the act of doing. It's easy. The figuring this out part is difficult. So I relate to that problem yourself. Sorry, myself. Have you got any, I don't know, maybe tricks up your sleeve how to keep the reader engaged with the copy?
Ooh. Um, I think in the context of a white paper, in a longer format than a blog, even in blogs, but in kind of that longer format, I do think the design is actually really important. Especially, and like, probably don't expect me to say that as a copywriter, but especially if you're printing it out, because quite a lot of my clients will have a roundtable event or something that they're launching that they'll want to print out the white paper for. And so I think things like pulling out quotes, breakout boxes, infographics, they all really help keep people reading. Sometimes some not case studies, but kind of relatable kind of case studies, kind of relatable first person use cases, I guess is another way you could describe them. They can really help create kind of an emotional, kind of complement the intellectual connection you're making with the reader with an emotional connection. And I find that is something that I try to do throughout the white paper as a kind of storytelling approach, is make sure that I'm balancing those two things. Because I think people, especially if you're talking to, if the person reading is someone who's quite specialized in their job, like a lawyer, they want the intellectual stimulation. But people buy from people. We all know the kind of cliches, and that storytelling, and kind of magic that you get from hearing about someone you can relate to and the exact kind of their thoughts or the situation that they've been in. I think that's really important to keep people reading, and it also helps with not making it feel too commercial or too salesy as well.
There's this myth. Well, I call it a myth because I believe it's a myth, but you might disagree. That's fine. The attention span apparently is very short online, and things like white paper prove it's not right. It's not actually true. If something people if people find something relatable like a white paper, they don't care if it's 3,000 words long. They're gonna just swallow it, because if it's great, if it's valuable, educative, they're gonna read
Mm.
it. And things like you mentioned, to keep them emotionally engaged, that elevates the experience even further. What do you think about the attention span?
I agree with you. I also think podcasts are a really good um, example of that, because I listen to like 4 hours of podcasts a day probably. I work to
Whoa.
them, I walk to them.
Oh
I'm
my
a
god. Okay.
big podcast person.
All right, right. Nice. You have to share some of those with me later then.
Yeah, and I always hear, I don't know, my dad will be like, "Oh, you generation, you're all on TikTok, or you have spent your time of 7 seconds," and I'm actually not on TikTok, and I
Yeah,
listen to
me
hours of people
neither.
talking every day.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely, I think people, I almost think it's kind of swung the other way, not swung the other way, but I think there's room for both. I think I so much of so much content that is really short, I don't necessarily find that there's enough um, intellectual stimulation in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
No.
feel like it gives both sides of something, or there's enough space for that topic to really breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I yeah, long form. I think it's
Maybe
not
it's
dead.
a sort of excuse that was invented by people who just can't write. I don't know.
Yeah,
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 could be. Uh,
yeah. It's a
there's
valid
what.
argument.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's one thing that comes to mind. Have you heard of Flash is reading score?
Yes. Yeah.
Do
Oh,
you use
hell
that
yes.
or?
um, in some of my work, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I work for a big bank for their innovation arm, not within white papers, within blogs, and they
Mm-hmm.
have like some of my clients will have a set score that they need all their content to be at.
Whoa.
So I
I've
think,
never come across a company that has this beyond mine. It's crazy.
mm, mm. So there's a 60, I think, is what I write to for
Yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm.
And but to be honest with you, I find balancing, if you're talking to a legal audience, for example, which is what I do quite a lot of my work in the legal tech world, it is really hard to get to get a score of
It is.
60.
Yeah.
And so uh, I haven't used it that much for white papers,
Mm-hmm.
because the topics that I talk about tend to be, oh sorry, the topics that I've written on tend to be quite complex. But I would imagine kind of those vanilla white, the backgrounder ones, white papers, you can there would be a case to use it in that situation, unless it was a really technical product.
It's
So yeah,
very
I do use it in
tricky.
some of my writing, but not for all of my writing.
Of course, I mean, you've got to choose tools for the job. It's
Mm,
normal.
mm,
One, I guess, semi funny thing comes to my mind is on LinkedIn, I try to post a tagline for my
mm.
company, and I cranked up the e-score to over 90.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we had a tagline. We help marketing leaders to leverage a website for business growth, something like this, a long time ago. But anyway, it
Mm,
was a mouthful. And I cranked it up to 90, and it was basically we do websites. Something
mm,
so completely it was brought down to the extent of simplicity that no longer made sense. So again, those
mm.
extremes are probably not so good. Even when you use a benchmarking tool with like Flash Easy Reading Score, you still have to judge yourself if the sentence after reaching the 60, 70 points, it actually means what you want it to mean, because it's just a tool, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I find when I'm using it, a lot of the time I will lose the personality of the brand.
Mm,
And so it kind of depends on the type of communication as well. Like if you're if it's thought leadership and you're trying to make a case for, or sorry, maybe if it's middle of the funnel, so a little bit more kind of insight type of content, and you're trying to make a case for why us,
yeah.
then yeah, you can lose some of that kind of like special sauce or that personality.
And how about working with I guess ChatGPT on the
Mm-hmm.
same kind of wavelength. We have Flash Easy Reading Score, which is very manual work, just to adjust the sentence
Mm,
so it matches a
mm.
certain score. But what if you use AI to help you, and in the same line, are you using AI to help you with your work and to
Oh, sorry.
we got it? Hey, hey, we're back. Yeah, can you hear me?
Hey.
Hey, what's
I
that?
I had a little banner come up saying something about uploading. So I'm not
Okay.
sure. I don't know what
Uh,
that means.
I
Yeah, it
think
says
it just
uploading.
it's constantly uploading the footage. So whether we
Mm.
disconnect or not, it
Oh, yeah.
is
Okay.
it's there. So again, that's why I'm
Okay.
not like the tool like the Riverside. I really like it just works, and it yeah. I mean, whatever happens, they got you, and that's just brilliant.
Yeah.
So we can just have a chat, and that's it. And I only ask if you use any AI in your work,
But yeah.
alongside the maybe Fleshy Score and any other tools.
I do use it.
Mm-hmm.
I use it uh, for outline. Not really. Yeah, I use it. I will. I use it in as a kind of structure tool.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So I will have an idea. So let's say, okay, I have this structure, this outline that I've written for a white paper. Help
Mm-hmm.
me um, just kind of make it break it down into each section, and then I find it easier for myself to kind of judge the flow, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it's kind of I'm putting a bit more unstructured data and I'm making it more structured essentially. But
Okay.
I don't like it for actually writing, to be honest.
I wouldn't trust it either. No, that's that's fine. Okay, I do the same stuff with ChatGPT or any AI whatsoever. I only trust it to a certain extent to just make sense out of data without
Mm,
any like bias, any judgment. Like at some point, I want to take over and inject my personality, my experience, and some kind of flavor, which ChatGPT just can't do. And to
mm,
that point,
mm.
before that, I'm just throwing everything at it and help me out make sense out of it because just it saves time. I'll probably arrive at the same conclusion hours later, but what's the point if I can just speed things up? That's it, right?
Yeah, and I also think it can be good for brainstorming. Actually, for websites, I find it quite useful for
Mm-hmm.
brainstorming headlines. And
Okay.
I'll never. It's very rare that I'll take an exact hero statement or headline that it's given me, but it will just help me spark ideas. It might have like two words next to each other, and I'm like, oh, that's nice alliteration. Let me see if I can word that into something else. So I'll just say, give me like 20 different versions of this kind of headline. So I like it for that kind of ideation as well. Um,
That's nice. Uh,
yeah,
I
yeah.
I would recommend against asking ChatGPT to create rhymes for you. It's really bad. It can't rap.
I haven't tried
No,
that.
no, don't. I mean, I under. So the reason why I tried that is because my last guest we were talking about injecting humor into copywriting, and I thought
Mm.
rhyming was kind of okay. Like we on the website right now we have, um, we've got everything together from start to forever kind of headline.
Mm-hmm.
Like But when you ask ChatGPT to do the same for you, it's just terrible. It's absolutely the worst. It doesn't make any sense, or it uses just two words which are exactly the same, and it thinks it's clever. Like it's just so stupid. Like, don't do it. So
Yeah.
so we researched, we wrote, and how do you send it out? Like, what do you think is the best way to distribute the white paper?
Okay, so there's quite a few different ways, or not
Mm-hmm.
ways, there's just a few different things that you can do.
Yeah.
Um, and the first thing I would think about is make sure you have its own landing page.
Mm-hmm.
You would be very surprised at how many businesses don't think that's don't think that's important.
All right.
Yeah, and they'll
Oh,
just like
wow.
stick it in a blog page or in a resources or something, or in like a hub. Have its own landing page. And when you're on the landing page, something that I think it can be really nice is, instead of just having like a mock up of the front and then a form,
Mm-hmm.
is there like a content snippet that you can pull out or something? Some people have like a tool, or maybe if it's maybe if the paper is one of those backgrounders about a specific product or something, you could have a little demo video. But
Mm-hmm.
is there something you can pull out of the paper that is gonna spark someone's interest and get them to download? I think that's a really nice way to kind of frame it and encourage downloads
Mm-hmm.
from the landing page. On your homepage, one of those little sticky banners,
Oh,
is that what it's
yeah.
called?
Yeah, that's a very
Up,
good
up the
idea.
top.
Yeah.
I think those can be really impactful. And I like to have a CTA above the fold on the homepage as well,
Hmm.
if the client will let me. Some people are a bit funny about that. And then I guess this is all assuming that your white paper is gated, right? So this is
Mm-hmm.
assuming that you're using a form to hopefully qualify leads. That can be something really useful you can do with the form.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a downloadable. But I think a lot of people stop at kind of homepage and landing page, but there's also lots of other places on your website that you can pop your white papers. And so maybe in your service page or your product page, if it's particularly relevant
Mm.
to a service or a product, as well as writing new blogs about the white paper and taking kind of different content ideas from the white paper. Are there any old blogs you can update and link to the white paper if it's particularly relevant? I think there's a few missed opportunities that people just often don't think about. And especially because your product or service page often will have your highest traffic. So, or second highest traffic maybe. So that can be a good way to get more eyeballs on it. And then in terms of kind of distribution beyond that, there's lots of different things. So I think that most white papers you can get like a quarter's worth of content out of. So for your next 3 months, what can you what can you pull out of that white paper and post across your socials, emails? When someone downloads the email, they should get like a welcome or a launch sequence of emails, but then to your
Mm.
newsletter or whatever, your regular emails, they should definitely be getting snippets after as well. You can get like 5 to 8 blogs is normally what I say you can get out of one white paper. If you
Wow.
pull on different themes, or if it's got data especially, that can be really good for blogs. You might be able to get a case, if there's a case study that you've included in the white paper, build that out to a separate case study on your website. Webinars, a lot of my clients like to kind of run a webinar on the topic of the white paper,
That's so
which
good.
can be a nice way to amplify.
Yeah.
Influencers, and by that I mean if you've quoted external experts,
Mm-hmm.
can you ask them to share it on their socials, or kind of invite them to a workshop or a webinar and get them to speak about it? And then media, if you want to get PR coverage, pitching and making sure that you've got a good pitching the story on the kind of launch of the white paper out to journalists, and making sure you've got a strategy around that. Maybe it's guest posting, maybe it's traditional media. There's a few different ways you can do that.
It
So
it's just so
yeah.
beautiful. Wow. Wow, mind blown. Oh my god. So we have wait. Okay, so we have landing page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On which you can have the top banner linking to a
Mhm.
landing page, perhaps, which is its
Mhm.
own form of a lead gen.
Yep.
On that landing page, we have a sneak peek into the white paper so people can see what they're actually downloading and why they're exchanging information for it. Then
Yep.
you can plug the same white paper to maybe high intent commercial pages like product or service page,
Mhm. Mhm.
because in my head, when someone's not ready to buy, white paper is a nice middle step
Mm.
for them, like
Yeah.
transitional call to action. So beautiful. um,
Mm.
and then if people allow you, you also recommend to have call to action specific for the white paper above the fold. And I know how protective people are of their
Mhm.
call to action, so I totally get that. And beyond the website, you can turn that into different articles, posts,
Mhm.
webinars, which is wow, I never thought about that. Actually, this is great. So
Mm.
webinars, you can approach people who you quote in the paper. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Mm.
Wow.
That's what I mean. It's a really you get a lot of bang for your buck with the white.
Oh yeah.
If you do it right, you can get, yeah, they can be really high ROI. It's just being smart and making sure that you have a content plan before
Hmm.
you put it on your website.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
so the longevity of that white paper is just crazy long. It's
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
if unless you put like 2024 in the title, then maybe it's just 1 year lifespan. But um, other than that,
But
I
then you
think.
can,
Hmm.
yeah, but then you can turn that into a kind of yearly benchmark, maybe. So it
Hmm.
becomes something that you do every year. There's different ways to make it into a series. Yeah, there's ways you can kind of make it last a bit longer. But yeah, generally you can dine out in it for a very long time.
I bet. No, I can see. I think Gartner's doing that with their reports, right? Every year they have
Yeah,
something about
they have loads.
CMOs and etc. etc. They're
Mm,
very famous for white papers. Um,
mm,
Speaking of, I guess success metrics, maybe I don't know how to call that. It's just
mm-hmm.
a weird intangible thing in to some people. What kind of data points do you track to see if the white paper did well? Is that subjectives per client, or do you have any
Yeah,
objective metrics?
it is subjective, and it also depends on what the client wants the white paper to do.
Uh-huh.
So what the point of the white paper is. But I guess some popular ones would be downloads. So how many people have filled out your contact form? A lot of my clients will work to marketing qualified leads or marketing influence revenue. Revenue is a bit harder to track, but
Mm-hmm.
marketing qualified leads um, tends to come after someone's downloaded, and then they get a score which is based on, let me see if I can remember this, behavior fit, I think, which is kind of like what budget they're in.
Ooh.
Oh, sorry, what sector they're in, what kind of budget they're likely to have. And there's one more. Oh, engagement.
Ah.
Um, and so you're normally what happens is the sales team or the marketing team will see that someone's downloaded, track them for a bit, and give them a score off those three criteria, and then it becomes a marketing qualified lead. So marketing is then found someone who could buy and is legitimately could buy and hands it off to the sales team.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of B2B SaaS um, clients kind of they're looking for more marketing qualified leads. Engagement time is something that some people track, but that kind of depends on how set up you are in the back end, and sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. Social shares, and then if you're doing media, if you're doing podcasts, kind of tracking how many opportunities you get off the back of that
Mm-hmm.
as well. Most of them are gated white papers, so it's a bit harder. Like some of the metrics are a bit harder than kind of if it was just a ungated piece of content on the website.
Hmm.
But yeah, those generally are what people tend to want. Stuff like kind of market position and brand authority. That's pretty hard to track
It
in my
is.
experience.
Yeah.
And that kind of relies on conversations. I guess the team start having. Um, but yeah, I'd say those are the main ones.
Okay. Okay. No, I think I'd never heard about behavioral fit. I will very much look into it. I'm interested to learn more about this. But MQLs, they do really come up in conversations very often, in regards to websites, and I'm not surprised in regards to white papers too. It's just, I think, a sensible metric in terms of the quality of. And of course, there's a question: how do you measure quality of a lead? Right? There's a different topic, but yeah, it only makes sense to have some kind of indicator whether we're getting the right traction with the investment that we made. Um, Before people can download and sign up for the white paper, they obviously need to find it interesting, and hopefully, we've done the research right, and it is actually on point and relatable to them. But when you put that white paper on the website, let's say on your product page as a as a section on the page, how do you make it, I guess, click worthy, engagement worthy? So just to maybe finish that question with the Gartner example, when you go to Gartner website, all they do, they literally lead with the white paper title. It's like the title, form, download, and perhaps there is a brand behind that white paper which screams credibility, and not everyone has that. How do you make it clickbaity? Like, I'm thinking about YouTube thumbnail video kind of thing. Do you approach it that way, or do you let the white paper defend itself and you just say what it is? There you go. That's what you're gonna get.
If it is a brand that has less, maybe it's a newer brand, or they have less of that kind of cachet, that brand affinity, then yeah, it's kind of all comes down to the copy, the kind of click through copy. And so I would make sure the title is interesting.
Yeah.
And then
hopefully
normally,
we have it right by now.
Yeah, the title's interesting. And then normally I would write like a couple of lines of copy that is benefits focused, kind of outcomes focused, or transformation focused, and what people are actually going to get from the white paper. And then I would normally try and put kind of some kind of risk reversal, kind of micro copy maybe under the call to action button, because I just think that it just helps. It just means there's normally less objections to clicking through. And then the idea is, in a perfect world, I think they would click through onto that landing page. They would see that snippet that you've pulled out, or that interesting video or kind of animation or whatever it is, and then that would encourage them to download. I also think kind of making sure it's instant can make quite a bit of difference. So sometimes you'll download a white paper. I did this literally yesterday. I went to download one, and my request had to be like approved by, I presume, the sales team, because they wanted to qualify me, but I didn't get it until probably like 28 hours later. And I just think that that's, unless this was quite a big brand. So but I think for most companies, that's a way to kill a white paper.
That's weird.
Yeah. So I think yeah, making sure it's instant, and kind of, I guess, not advertising that it's instant, but kind of making sure that it's in your copy, you're signaling that you're going to get it now.
Yeah.
And I tend to prefer them kind of on the page rather than sent to me via email. But that might be a personal thing.
So when you submit the form, it just takes you right away to the white paper. That's it.
Yeah. I think that's an easier journey, because then someone might go and do something, come back to their email, they get really busy, and they just don't read it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what's your favorite platform for distribution, but it seems like you don't really have any. You just simply let people read it right away, and that's the simplest form of sending it over.
Yeah, actually, sorry, now I've said that, I like both. So in my perfect world is you click right through to it, but then you also get emailed a copy, because then you can take someone through kind of an email sequence, and that's just another way to nurture that lead, and then you can hopefully get them a bit more into your orbit.
And
and take
presumably in
them.
that sequence, you then follow up with questions in regards to the content of that white paper, as in like, what did you find interesting? Is that the way you're going with this?
Yeah, well, I think almost you'd get the white paper, and then the next email could be pulling out some kind of I don't know, case study or
Hmm.
kind of something that's very interesting from the white paper,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe give it a bit more detail or a bit more color, so that they're getting something additional than the white paper. And then sometimes you can kind of go then a bit more into the um, uh, general marketing of the solution. So maybe talking to objections that they're likely to have, or um, more education around the product or the service. And then, if someone's clicked through all of those and they've opened each email, they'll probably tick over into a marketing qualified lead. And then the sales team will probably be like, hey, what did you think of this? And
Yeah.
the conversation goes from there
And
generally.
it's gonna
Yeah.
make salespeople very happy that way. Okay. Uh, well, after this entire conversation, it's clear to me how multi-layered the whole thing is. Like how many
Mm.
things you have to think about while creating the white paper is just unbelievable. I when I write a social post on LinkedIn, I basically spend like an hour maybe just to make sure everything tracks.
Mm.
1 hour is, I think, is reasonable for a LinkedIn post. But when we scale that up to a white paper size, the volume of research and things that can go wrong, and the processes that we need to keep that in line and check, and then everything that happens during the writing and the distribution, like these all are like almost separate projects. It's just crazy. And so I can't really blame you for having a strict process to go through it. So many things can go wrong. You need to keep that in check. You have to have control over it. So I admire. I mean, hats off to you for doing what you're doing, because people may say, white paper, what's the problem? I'm just gonna type in docs.new in Google Chrome. It's
Mm.
gonna open Google Doc, and I'm just gonna get on with it. Well, try,
Mm.
okay, and see where you
Mm.
end up. It doesn't work that
Mm.
way, as Caroline said in this chat. Look, I found this conversation very enlightening. I really, really appreciate you coming on board. That was absolutely fantastic. Is there anything else I maybe didn't ask, or you wanted to add on top for people listening to us?
Not really. It's nice to have someone to geek out about white papers with, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
It's yeah, I love them. And with the process, especially as like I'm a one woman band, so I write a few white papers at a time, and if I didn't have the process, it would make my brain explode.
Oops.
Yeah, so that's all good. It's been so interesting to chat to you about it and really think more about what I do, because it comes so natural. I'm sure it's the same with you
Hmm, hmm.
after you've done it so many times. Um, but yeah, I'm launching a new white paper offer next year, and
Oh,
my white wait list will open soon.
oh my God! Tell me
So
more.
that's
Tell me
something.
more.
So it's going to be, I actually came up with the name the other day. I decided on a name, so I'm quite excited about it at the moment.
Hmm.
It's called the Credibility Engine, and it is going to
Oof.
be a 6 to 8 page white paper,
Hmm.
and it's all about anchoring authority, driving MQLs, and being able to take that one piece of content and generate 3 months kind of additional content from it. So yeah, that's opening up next year, but my waitlist will go on my website soon. So if anyone wants more information, you can head over to my website, which
Sign
is
me up.
Story Copywriting.
Yeah, I'm in. Look, you said MQL. Who can
Mm,
resist that? I mean, we need MQL. So
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, no, this is brilliant. So the credibility engine. I love the name. So good.
Mm,
Uh, so essentially, what you will do with that is you will help people make the most out of their white paper.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. And um yeah, it's the whole process like I've just spoken through. So
Hmm.
there's a lot in it, but it's it's the whole shebang. And I can come up with the topics, or someone can give the topic to me. It happens both ways.
Excellent. We'll make sure to link to that in the description. I will give it a shout on LinkedIn as well. It was such a pleasure. How people can reach out to you in case they had questions, because I try to ask questions and try to dive deep when I can, but I'm aware like we don't have 4 hours to sit in here. So if anyone has like follow-up questions, how can they find you to talk to you about those?
So I'm on LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
at Caroline Voden, and my website is www.storycopywriting.co.
.co, no M.
Dot
Okay.
.co.
.co.
No
Yeah,
M. Too
no.
expensive to get the M.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. I love that. Good. 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 Okay. Okay. I think we'll finish on that one. Thank you again. Thank you so much for coming, and let's just stick around for a round of questions, which I think I have. So
Cool.
thank you, Caroline, again. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Let me pull it up because we disconnected at some point. I think the chat reset, and oh,
Oh,
actually no, it didn't. Wait. Again, I mean the Riverside is really making me happy
it's
right
got
now.
you.
Yeah. A series of blogs probably has the extra downside that most people won't even discover all of them, let alone
Mm,
read them.
very,
Sounds
very
like
good
there's
point.
ironically more distribution work for a series of blogs versus a white paper. That's a question.
Mm,
Is there?
I don't. Well, it kind of depends how. It depends on the blog, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're writing a blog for SEO, then like pure, you know how some people just churn out blogs purely for SEO. There's probably
Mm-hmm.
less distribution in that.
Mm-hmm.
To be completely honest with you, but I guess the theory still stands. Like, if you write an amazing blog, then you can amplify it across your socials, not for as long, but you can put it on your socials, you can do podcasts about it, you can do a webinar about it, you can get influencers to share it. There's quite a lot of the same,
Mm-hmm.
but I think a white paper probably there's more overall distribution. Especially, I think also people just put more, you because the white paper is more of an investment. There's more energy put behind distributing it, I think.
That makes sense. And then on the back of white paper, you can create blog posts as well, and then sort of,
Mm, mm,
yeah, it kind of a snowball effect in a way.
mm.
Okay. I thank you. No, that was the only question we had. That was from David. He follows you vividly on LinkedIn, so he knows where to find you just in case.
All
But
right,
okay,
cool.
I will stop the live stream now, so we can
Mm-hmm.
wait the thing upload, and we will be going to do our own thing, or you're probably going to laid back, and but I have a whole day ahead of me. So
Of
thanks
course.
everyone for watching. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
All right, I'm just stopping. Okay, I stopped it. Just okay. We got 77% uploading. Yeah, it's uploading.
Cool.